Hello and welcome to another episode of the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast. And we are slowly but surely making our way around our different aspects of the property strategy business plan and delving into what's really behind them. So today we are covering the elements of mission and promise, what they mean, what you've got to think about to be able to create these, to be able to put them onto your business plan. So there is a downloadable copy of the property strategy one-page business plan in the show notes if you want to populate this, and we have had episodes previously where we're going through slowly but surely and covering all of the different elements. So myself and Dom today, some amazing conversations around these areas, and for us with Tomes Homes, sharing how we brought this to life and the learnings that we've had in creating these. So without further ado, here's myself and Dom. Hello, Dom.
Hello, Jackie.
Another day, another podcast episode, and today we're talking about your mission with what you're doing and also the promise that you make to the people that you work with. So just to put today's episode in context, we are going through in various different episodes the different aspects of our property strategy business plan, and that includes your vision, your values, your strategy, the targets that you're setting for yourself, and then also just the foundations of what your business actually does. So we're going through all the different facets of the business plan. We'll put in a link into the show notes if this is something that you want to be able to use and fill out. It's inspired by a tool called Strategy on a Page, which was created by BGI, which we used for several years. And then we evolved it to be this business plan on one page, specifically targeted in the market of property investors. So that's what this one is for. So today we're just delving into a couple of areas that feel like the right kind of conversation for the two of us to have.
Indeed. So why do people need a mission in their business? I mean, if they just want to make money, right? So why do you need a mission? And is it even necessary?
I think it's always good to start looking at something that's like outside us and bigger than ourselves. Actually, an interesting thing is on the original version of Strategy on a Page, mission wasn't on there, but instead purpose was. And it was something that, as I was going through and working with people and helping them to create their strategies, it was just something that just didn't feel quite the right angle for property investors. Now, rightly or wrongly, you kind of want this to be the intersection of what's going to feel right to you and good to you and push you in the right direction. So when I was redesigning it, I was like, I actually think mission is better as kind of just this idea of something that you're aiming towards with what you're doing, that is something that's like outside of yourself, which arguably maybe this something we can debate today too, like the differences between mission and purpose. But yeah, I guess it is taking it away from you and looking at maybe what you're doing more widely in the industry and why that's important.
Yes, it makes sense, because whenever I see people who are doing things just for themselves, they never succeed nearly as much as if they're doing something for other people. And I think I've said it before, but it can be explained at a cellular level. If cells on their own are not engaging with other cells and around it, exchanging energy, information, things like that, then on their own they're completely pointless and will die very quickly. And you know, we're made up of 50 trillion cells. So if we're not engaging and providing a service or doing something for other human beings or animals or a purpose that's greater than us, then actually, you know, you're never going to succeed as much. You're not going to push yourself as hard because you don't do as much for yourself as you do for other people, for loved ones, for example. You know, people put their family first, they put their kids first, they put their animals first, they treat their loved ones better than they treat themselves. You know, they don't take themselves to the gym, they don't do exercise, they don't feed themselves the best food, but they will, you know, ensure that other people and their loved ones are. So having a mission is, well, it's something bigger, as you say, bigger and outside of yourself, but also it's kind of what you're doing that enables that thing to happen, that business to happen. So if we were to dive into an examples, maybe.
Great. That's what I was going as well. So I was thinking maybe where this really crystallized for me around the mission was for our own investment company, which is obviously the springboard for all of these things that we do. So Tomes Homes. So I think when we used to be focused more on trying to make a purpose, and I look back at the versions of purpose that we had, I just think it was a load of crap, really. It's like kind of saying what you think people want you to, just kind of grab onto something. Like we used to have things like transforming properties, you know, taking something run down and turning it into something beautiful. Now, I think for some people, there is a genuine purpose in that, but I think there's far less people with purpose in that than are actually saying that. I think a lot of us are saying versions of those words, but really it's not purpose. But for us, it kind of made a lot more sense to me. We in the process of building homes, when we first started, we were working with an external letting agency, and which is great, as many people do. Like, you just want people to help and rent the properties for you so that you can focus on other aspects of the business. And we got to a certain point in the business, maybe there was like 50 units, something like that. And it was like, we worked with amazing people, really great guy who was building up his company. Like, he was just amazing. It was great to work with him. And it just kind of got to the point that we were starting to look at how we can optimize the business. And it was getting to the point that, you know, we were starting to get slightly longer voids than we'd had before. We were starting to get arrears where we hadn't before. And also we were in a phase where we were more in a consolidation phase. So rather than pushing a lot to buy a lot more, it was more about how can we optimize and maximize what we already have, which I think is I think it's good flow. I haven't quite figured out the overall how that works in terms of years. I think there's a model there at some point, but we then started saying, hey, let's bring it in-house and start to do this ourselves. And it's a very different vibe, really, because obviously you can afford to pay a letting agency as part of your what you're doing. Like, you need to be able for it to stomach that. But then when we started to look at bringing it in-house and potentially paying like the same amount of money that we had been paying to an external agent, obviously we're not trying to make profit on the lettings part of it. We just want it to operate as good as possible. So we realized that we actually, if we didn't necessarily reduce the costs but kept the same costs, we could have a more manpower to be able to run the lettings, which in theory then should mean that you can offer a much higher service than you could if you were a letting agency, where of course you do have to make a profit. It is a business in itself. So we did that, and we brought that in house, and we started to figure out how to make that work. And then we started to realize that obviously there's kind of really two camps generally, I would say. There's there's self-managing landlords, there's letting agencies, and we started to realize that we were almost like that intersection between the two of them. And I know we're not unique, there's other people doing this, but I say there's a much smaller number of people who have a decent sized portfolio and who are managing their own properties and wanting to do it well. And as all these pieces of the puzzle started to kind of come together in my mind, I was like, we can make a very different experience here with the resources that we have. And that we can afford, and we're not trying to make profit. We can deliver a better overall service to the tenants, and this is not necessarily about providing, you know, super high quality properties, good quality properties, but it's not luxury, but it's just like, we should be able to provide a really great service. So that's all the backstory to basically say we decided our mission was going to be to make renting better than owning, because obviously, you know, when you're owning property, if your boiler breaks down, you've got to deal with that, you know, like you've got to pay for that. But if it's set up right with the lettings and the management side, your boiler breaks down, it should all be able to organize itself to get fixed in a short space of time. The contractor should be there. It's not going to cost you any money. It's actually, oh gosh, wow, this is actually better than owning. Now, in reality, that's a story for another day, maybe. It has been much harder to make that mission a reality than I imagined. But that's the point of a mission, right? It's not that this is necessarily where I am now. This is what I'm heading towards. And it's a reason that other people aren't doing it, because it's really hard to do it and get it right. But that's where the mission came from for Tomes Homes. And it really starts to influence the decisions that you make.
Yeah, I love that. So you gave a perfect example there. Is literally you spoke for 2, 3, 4 minutes, explaining everything about the business and what it was doing, and actually then condensed it down into effectively a mission statement: make renting better than owning. And that just captures and simplifies so that people can understand it and get behind it and go, oh, okay, that's what they stand for. That's something I want to, be involved in, or I would rent from them because they want to make it easier for me to rent than they do if I was to own it. And yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. And when you condense it into a mission statement like that, people can really get behind it. Now, what's the difference though between a mission statement and something like John Lewis, never knowingly undersold, which I have to say they have now changed, which is more of a that's more of a sort of a tagline, maybe, sort of like a marketing tagline. So is there a difference
Is
between
that
a mission statement and a tagline?
Yeah, how does that fit in? Let's keep that example with John Lewis because I think it's good and we're all aware of it.
Mm,
Like I think then we start to be like, how does this fit in with the promise? Because that links back to their, I don't know if
okay.
they still have that same promise, which is basically if you find it cheaper elsewhere, we'll refund the difference. And that was their promise, something like that at one
Yeah,
point.
I don't think they've done that because they've lost so much money recently. They're not doing that. I think it's changed. I don't know what it is, but clearly not as famous as as the previous one.
Mm. Because that to
Um,
me is what never knowingly undersold means. Like we won't be more expensive than other people, right?
yes, right. But it's phrased in a different way, and because they don't want to be the cheapest, but they
Mm.
won't. If you know different, then they'll match the price. But if you don't know different, then they won't.
And we won't look too deeply at what's going on because we
Yes,
want to believe
exactly.
we're doing a really. It is a weird one actually, and it's amazing how much that's really stuck in our mind because I think it's
Mm.
really weirdly articulated. And what does it really mean? What are they really promising? But somehow it's landed. Do you have any thoughts
I,
on that?
and so well there's definitely so there's a vision of what people can buy into, there's a mission of kind of what it is that you're doing, and then there's taglines like just do it for Nike, never knowing they're undersold for John Lewis previously, and others. you know yeah, I'm loving it. From McDonald's and various other things, taglines. So I think it's important to not get confused. You could definitely have a tagline. It helps with your marketing. You get known for that. It's like brand colors and things like that. So that taglines are about branding. I think the mission statement is sort of a bit more, the marries the purpose and what behind it. And I guess back to the point you were making before about mission is slightly different to purpose. Purpose, yeah, is the reason behind it. Most people that I know, I would say sort of 60 to 80% of people that have got into property wanted to get into property to be able to have money that comes in automatically so that they can then go and do the life that they want, whether it's sailing around the world or playing golf or whatever it might be. They just wanted the freedom that property gives you.
And that's why you can't put purpose on a business plan
There we
because
go.
that is not a business purpose. The business purpose is that I don't want this business. It's basically that's why there's a problem in property because so
Yes.
many people don't want
Yes.
a property business, but they're building it because they think it can give them what they want. And that's why it just gets all a bit ick to me.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And that's why it's better to see property as a stepping stone towards that life that you do want to live, and have a mission that means that you're doing some good and providing some
Mm.
service to society, which enables you to be rewarded for that in terms of money, income and money. That then means you get closer to your purpose, maybe, of being on
Mm.
this planet and what it is you really want to do and achieve. I've got a friend. She's sort of mid 50s, but she got out of the being in the police thanks to property, and now she concentrates on doing um, triathlons for her age category, and she inspires other women when she posts on social media and other people. She inspires people who are slightly older to be healthy, fit, and healthy, and do amazing things and accomplish amazing things and represent your country as well in that age category. So just because some people might not value that as an important purpose, actually it's important to her and it inspires a certain number of people, so that is her purpose, and that's wonderful that she gets behind that and inspires others. So your purpose doesn't have to be a massive big thing. It can be something that you love to do, and actually as a result of you being brilliant at it, like art, for example. If you love doing art and other people appreciate that art, that's a fantastic purpose in itself. So purpose it doesn't always have to be huge, but the mission, going back to what we were talking about, is one of the stepping stones that's going to help you get closer to that.
And I think we're kind of touching a little bit on potentially service as well here to others. So the mission is part of the foundation section on the business plan. So the other areas are mission, market opportunity, business model, deal criteria, avatar, and service. Dave and I are going to cover on some of these other subsections on another episode. But like, just to touch on service, I think this the difference between mission and service is like, mission, I'm not even there yet. Like, that's where I'm trying to go to. Service is more where I currently am and what service I am focusing on bringing at this moment in time to my customers, tenants, for example.
Yes, and the value that you bring and how you go about it. Yeah, absolutely. And Dave and I have done an episode on service, so people can look back at that one. That maybe leads us on to promise then. So we're going to talk about mission that we've done and promise. So from your perspective, what is a promise in business?
Well, ideally, it's something that is a concern in your customer's mind that they're concerned about, that if you can promise something that helps them to overcome that concern, it helps them to make the decision to work with you. And it's something that you ideally would experience some pain yourself if you were to break the promise. So that's why it's like a money back guarantee is like, that's a good example of a promise concept. So if you don't do what you're meant to do, there's a money back guarantee. So it basically would hurt you that you've got some kind of skin in the game kind of idea. But yes, really, it's to help people to make the decision.
Yeah, it's to right. Okay, so it's to help you make the decision and something you can be held accountable for effectively as well. If we go back to the origins of the word promise and even actually business, enterprise, so it can enterprise. So it's to enter a promise. So business is to enter a promise. And actually, I've just done an episode with Dave about money. And on banknotes, it says, I promise to bear the bearer on demand the sum of. And so money is a promise. Business is a promise. It's about something in the future. You're exchanging value, as in money, for something in the future where you're going to get effectively more value back than the money you spent. So promise is to put, so to put forward, go forward. So mise is a French word to put, and promise is to put forward, and that's why it's all about future-based value, basically, that you're exchanging money for to give you that value in the future. There's actually 8 areas of promise in business, and I'll run through them very quickly. But there's the enterprise promise, the purpose and the promise of the business. Then you've got the customer promise and what you're promising them, your network of the people you're engaging with, your partner promises if you've got partners in it, market promise to kind of the bigger market, investor promise, which obviously we go into when it comes to raising finance. Maybe there's a systems promise as well, because you need to run the business in an operationally efficient way, and a social promise in terms of giving back as well. So those are sort of 8 areas of business promise that you can go into, and if you get those things right, then you really do start to scale and do really have a very well-rounded business.
Interesting. I think for me, in terms of like looking at the page and creating the plan, the promise, the high priority promise, I think, to get right is what you're promising to your primary customer or client type. So I think so in property, we've got multiple kind of customers. So you have got tenants, you could have, depending on how exactly you're doing it, vendors or landlords could fit in there, and then investors. So I would say our primary sort of client type has been investors. And I think the thing is with all of this, creating your strategy, it's the kind of, and that's what I like it. It's like the intersection of art and science. Like, you can have all the principles and all the ideas, but then the art is like just the feeling your way through it to where you just make a choice of what to include. Because I think there's amazing ideas there. You've said 8 different areas, and I think it's the warning with that is to be like, don't sit there trying to figure out your 8 areas of business to get it done. Just right, what's the most important thing for where I'm currently at to be able to move in the right direction? And probably for most people, it is going to be the investor piece, I would say, for those people listening.
Yeah.
And yeah, indeed it was for us. And now thinking about where I started this part of the conversation about like money back guarantee, that's pretty complicated. And so I've kind of led you slightly down the garden path there, because I think how you do your money back guarantee for an investor is more challenging. It's something that we haven't found our version of how that investor promise links with a money back guarantee one. I think maybe slightly easier if you're like sourcing on deals to investors. Potentially there is some sort of money back guarantee that you could do there. Like the numbers will be within 10% of what we've promised, or we'll give you, you know, some of your all the fees 25% off or something like that. There could be some promise there that you get behind. But in terms of like working with JV partners or loan investors, we went with more of a feeling promise. And so to give some background on this, we our initial investors were family members, and I felt at one time that was somehow a bit like cheating, like we hadn't quite done it right. And so we weren't really owning that in terms of like this, our first investors were family members, and like that's who we are and that's where we came from. So we were kind of not just like obscuring it, just like that. We weren't really focusing on that as a thing. And I can remember as we started to move in more towards working with investors outside the family, we started to be asked for like references from our other investors. And because I hadn't been owning the fact that our first investors were family members, when that then request came in to talk to a family member, to talk to a previous investor, then it just became a bit awkward that I'm like, okay, here's my mother-in-law's phone number, or here's my brother-in-law's phone number. Like it was weird, but it didn't need to be weird. And it's actually in a conversation with Derry where we were talking about this, and he was like, why are you not owning the fact that that's where you came from? Like, why are you making that a problem? Because it's not a problem. Like you look at it, and this is what we're always talking about here, like looking at it from all the different angles. You like investing with your family is serious. Like you have to look after your family. You can't let them down. You're not going to be able to run away from them if you mess it up. Like you are like, it's a massive commitment. And I wasn't looking at it that way because it was just normal to me to do and behave like that. So actually we realized, how you treat your family's money is like, if you can treat everyone's money like that, that's how you would want it, right? So that's where the first version of the promise, actually it's still the same promise today, where that has come from, is we promise to treat your money as in the same way that we treat our own family's money. And that's what our promise was.
Nice. So keeping it super simple. That's really good. Keeping the promise simple and understandable is critical. It's, as you say, it's about lowering barriers so that it's easier for people to understand and get behind it and kind of feel like they can trust you and lend the money. I mentioned those 8 areas of promise, but it's funny because I did it on a training course, and I have to say it made zero difference to the quality of the business that we were running. And this is the thing, people like to get caught up in all the details. Like nothing, like keep it simple and start executing, because all this thinking is great and it's good, but actually you could spend way too long doing that, and actually it doesn't make any profound difference to the business. So most important is get executing and keep it simple and refine out in the business, out in the real world, not trying to get it perfect before you go out there and go, so it's better, even if your promise is not perfect right now, just get
it down. And that's more and more like when we first created our business plan, we were very perfectionist about it. And then when I started working with other people in the early days, I was very perfectionist about it. Like I wanted it all to feel really good and right, and like we'd really mold on it all. And it was all written up really nicely. It was all completed. The further along I've got with working with people and reflecting on where it's gone well for us and where it could have gone better, I'm
Mm.
like, we got too obsessed with this being perfect. So in our most recent workshop that we ran for our Dealmaker Accelerator clients in January, which we went through the whole business
Yes.
plan, getting people to fill it out. Now, before I would have taken, God, was it like 12 hours one-to-one, with also people going away and
Oh,
doing
wow.
work in between time to create the business plan. And I'm
Gosh.
like, no, no, no,
No
not
more.
doing that anymore. Like, guys, we have got, so on a workshop, maybe you've got like 6 usable hours. And I
Yes.
think we did some other stuff as well, potentially too. We've got 6 hours for me to explain all the different areas, and you are going to write it down. You are going to follow the best answer that you currently have,
Yeah.
and you're going to write it down. And even if you write it down going, this, I'm not happy with this, that's great, because by writing it down and being clear what you're not happy with is part of figuring out the
There
route
we
to
go.
what you are happy with.
Yes.
So like just getting it done. And you know what? It's also like that's my ideal, like blast everyone through it, get everyone to write down the easiest version that they can, even if it's in messy handwriting, if the spelling mistakes, it doesn't matter, get a version of it down, and do that in the moment. Like, I don't like running workshops where people come away with loads of follow-up work.
Yeah.
No, do it there and then, and just the best answer that you currently have at your disposal. And if you have to note the things that you kind of want to reflect on,
Yes.
that's great. And arguably, like the I'm not sure if we mentioned this on the first episode where we introduced the business plan, but these areas on here on the business plan don't all bear equal weighting at different times. So if you are more advanced in your business and you've already got team, potentially some of the more team strategy elements or financial strategy elements are important. But if you haven't yet really started, or you've only done a few deals, these foundations are going to be a lot more important. So for me, it's even less and less about this being all filled out. Like, there could be gaps because that's not the highest priority at the moment, but it's just part of like filling it up over time. So yeah, doing it imperfectly and doing the parts of it that are high priority at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. So can we bring it alive with some examples of promises then? I guess the never knowing the undersold is sort of a promise, but kind of isn't. I like our promise for the Dealmaker Accelerator program that we run, which is to say money back guarantee in the first month. If you're not completely blown away, money back guarantee, all of it, and you can walk away. And the thing is, in that month, we'll get to know them well enough to know whether or not it's going to work. And you know what? If they do walk away, it was never meant to be anyway. We're fairly good. It's never happened in terms of we tend to spot the right people that we can work with from the outset. But I think having that security that they have to go, you know what, this isn't right for me, I can walk away and get my money back. There's nothing better, really, is there? Because I think business needs to shift. It needs to be absolutely value driven, win-win. You pay for a brilliant service and you're happy with that service, and there isn't like, oh, I feel like I've been screwed over, which so many, sadly, training providers, particularly property training providers out there, do. They, grab all the money up front. Oh, it's your tough luck if you didn't do well on the program because you should have. And yes, in a way they should have, but maybe there's a little bit more sort of responsibility on both sides rather than
Yeah,
all in
I
one.
agree. And I think that's, for us in the industry, we are running a training company, and there is definitely a general reputation and vibe for training companies. So we've got to give people the confidence to come in and like experience what being part of a training company called Property Strategy is like, because it is not like others. And people come in, particularly if they're the right people, it's all always over and above what they expect in terms of how much support
Yes.
is provided. So I think obviously that's one side of it, but then the other side of it I've got is how we structure payments as part of Dealmaker Accelerator. So we only get the full payment for people coming in when they have achieved a certain percentage return on their initial investment. So they have to get 200% return on the first part of their payment to join the program before the balance of it is due. So it's basically us putting ourselves on the line saying, if we don't get you the results, if we don't work together as a team to get you the results, to build your cash flow by doing deals and raising finance, then we don't get paid properly for what we do. So therefore we're invested, and it becomes more of like a business partnership. So that's like there's another layer of promise, but along the same kind of line.
Yeah, which is amazing. I think anyone listening, if I saw a training company do that, I'd be like, wow, that's amazing. But one thing is that it's not for everyone. And that's why we're very picky about who we work with, because we only want to work with people that we know have got the right attitude to learning and to executing on things, because a lot of people want to be able to blame, the other party, and go, well, you didn't deliver this, you said you would and you haven't done it. Actually, it is a partnership. I think everyone we work with, this isn't really a training course, it's actually a business partnership. I was about to say like your accountant, but let's not go there. But it's kind of almost an essential thing to help them grow their business, just like marketing. You've got to do marketing in order to attract investors and to find leads if you're looking to source properties. You have to have marketing as an essential part of it. We become an essential part of their business for helping them to scale relatively quickly over at least 3 years, by which time they've mastered or hopefully have mastered our methodology, which enables them to carry on growing without us, which is ultimately what we want. We want everyone to be empowered to do their own thing, but it's kind of just learning the methodology well enough, and having the right attitude to carry on thereafter without support.
Really nice. So let me tell you my favorite promise of a place that doesn't exist anymore, but is my favorite example of a promise. Now at St Pancras International Station, there was a burger joint right near the station. And so before COVID, when you were in London loads doing meetings, and when I wasn't so health aware, I would come to the end of a busy day and I'd be wanting to make the soonest train back I could possibly get to head out back towards Margate. And you're always like, maybe the train's every like 20 minutes or half an hour. And I want food, and I really want hot food, and I want tasty food. And there was this burger place right at the foot of the escalators. I think it was called Prime Burger. And their promise was, your burger in, I think it was 5 minutes, or you get your burger for free.
Wow.
And this to me was an amazing promise, because it's win-win here, right? Either I'm going to get a burger and I'm going to get my train, because I've got 10 minutes till my train. So that would be great. So it makes me choose you over other vendors there. Or alternatively, I could miss my train, but I'll have gotten a free burger, so I'm going to be all right with it. That's just a brilliant location specific promise that really worked for me.
That is genius, because basically they've understood their customer need better than you even are aware of. You need to get food, you need hot food quickly before you get on the train. And actually, if you can be effectively guaranteed that burger, I'm going to go there, even if it's a premium price, because it's convenient, because it's like almost guaranteed, then I'm going to go there. And that's such a brilliant way to get the right customer, understand your customer's needs. So your promise really is actually understanding the worries, the concerns, the anxiety that your customers have well enough to solve them, so that they go, well, of course, why wouldn't I buy this burger or get training with this company, or whatever it might be, invest with this property person, developer. If you can address the problem so well and crystallize it in a company promise really efficiently, that's when things will really transform for you, and you'll start attracting a lot more investors or customers.
So true. And you can only do that, actually no, not only do that, you can really only do that very well if you really know who you're serving. And we're going to cover this in another episode, but just who are you working with? And it's like, you've got the more niche that you can be, the better. And this is the same with what we talk about, choosing your model and committing to one thing. It's the same version of that, but for the people that you're working with. And the more niche that you can be, it's scary because you feel like you're cutting out loads of people. But the further and further that we've niched who we're for on all of our businesses, the better everything has got, the better the service is, because you get to really, that's what Apple did so right. Like they obsessed about the customer. Who is the customer? How are they using it? What are their problems? And if you can do that for whoever your people are that you're working with, be that investors or landlords, what specific type of person are they? What's the situation that they find themselves in? What are the problems and pains that they're experiencing? And not layering on your expectation of what you think, but really listening to them and how they're articulating the problems, and then use that to craft your strategy. Like, this is a multi-layered thing, right? Because it all sounds very simple, but there's a lot of work and thinking, and it just, it evolves over time, and you don't even have to do it all perfectly to get progress. But past a certain point, you want to do more of it to create more value. You can charge more and deliver more transformational results. Like, it just gets better and better for everyone. The more niche that you get. So we'll cover more of that in another one. But then if you've got that clear niche, and then you plug that in with what your promise is, with that in mind, boom.
It explodes and you do really well. Absolutely. It is hard, isn't it, niching down? I know it is for another episode, but knowing who to say no to is as important as who you say yes to, because so many people I meet, and these are the ones who don't do so well, is when they're going, oh well, I can help anyone, or I source anywhere. It's like, really?
Anything, anywhere.
Yeah, I'll take anyone's money. It's like, really? Oh gosh. Yeah, no, absolutely. The more niche you are, definitely the easier it gets, and actually the more you attract the right people, because then also effectively the universe can respond, because it knows what you're looking for. If you're marketing to everyone, as the saying goes, you're marketing to nobody. So be very specific.
So what's your key takeaway for people then today, Dom, thinking about mission and promise being the key areas that we've delved into?
Okay, so I would say mission is just understanding that it's how you're doing what you're doing, and it's a stepping stone to your purpose. So it kind of links to it, but it's maybe not as specific as your purpose. And promise is an articulation of not necessarily the problem, but almost solving the problem that your customer has in a sentence that means that they go, oh, of course, I'm going to buy from them. I'm going to invest with them. And if you can get those two things right, then definitely business gets a lot better.
And these are really big questions. This would be my key takeaway. These are big questions that we're posing here. And it's lots of different things that have to kind of come together to get something that's really compelling. So probably your first stab at this is going to sound a bit crap. That's okay. Like, the only way to make it better is to start with something that you're kind of like, okay, I don't love it, but don't spend particularly if you're very early days, don't spend too long obsessing about these versions.
Yes.
As your business matures and grows, the time will come to really craft these, and we want to craft them when it's going to start to make a difference in the, not 10-20 years from now. We want this to be making a difference in the next sort of 1 to 3 years, or it's quite hard to justify the time going into that when there's loads of other stuff to do. So don't get perfectionist. Ask yourself the question, give yourself an hour's walk thinking about this, mulling on it, and come to the best conclusion that you can. And just trust that over time this will start to clarify itself into something much more compelling when the right time presents itself. Thank you so much for joining us on yet another episode of the Property Lifestyle Mastery Podcast. If you want to reach out to us or connect, you can find out all the information about how we help and support people at our website, which is property-strategy.com. You can reach out and send us a message on there. You can find out about how we support and mentor others to grow their property business, to do more deals, to raise finance, and ultimately create freedom. So we'd love to hear from you and connect if that's of interest to you. In the meantime, we'll be back again, same time next week, always on a Friday, with the latest episode of the podcast. And until then, wishing you a wonderful week ahead.